Marcus Hayes with Fight Hub TV here with Robert Garcia in partnership with Play Undisputed, available now on PS5 and Xbox. Coach, fresh back from New York.
That's right.
I see you with your bag and still might have your things on the road. Here you are, big fight again tonight, man. Talk to us about the event that was in Times Square yesterday.
Look, it was Friday. It was a different event, you know, different than what we're used to. Different than what we're used to. You know, we're used to, you know, the big arenas, you know, locker rooms and stuff like that. It was just weird, you know. It was a small corner where they put the ring, like 200 seats only. It was blocked off for the crowd. The locker rooms were in the hotel 2 blocks away. It was weird. It was weird, but just a different experience. You know, it was good just being part of it.
So just different, a different kind of a setup than we're normally used to seeing.
100%.
Where things are right there. The doctors check in and check
exactly.
out. Everything's different. I heard there was a little bit of confusion with some footage that was out about Jose in an ambulance. What's going on with that, Coach?
Bill Haney.
Was Jose injured?
Look, I've always said it, and before the fight and after the fight, you know, I've always talked good to the Haneys. They've always given me nothing but respect. But for Bill to post a picture of Jose in the ambulance after the fight and saying something like they hurt him and they had to send him to the hospital, he knows he's lying to himself. He knows he's lying to the world, and that's what disappoints me, because he's a grown man. He's not a kid. He's a grown man, and he knows exactly that there was no locker rooms in that arena because it was a small corner. It was in the street. The locker room was in the hotel 2 blocks away. So they clearly told us in the rules meeting, after the fight, every fighter is gonna go back to the street, and then we're gonna have ambulance. And they're all gonna go into the ambulance and be checked by the doctor.
It's just like they rolled in the cab.
Just like they do here. Right now, right here, my fighter, right now, our Barrera, just won by knockout.
Right.
He still goes to the back and sees the doctor. Every fighter does that in every single fight. Everybody should know that.
Absolutely.
Every fighter does that. He goes and sees the doctor, they clear him and everything, they go to their locker room. So right there in New York, every fighter went to the back, to the ambulance, the doctors checked them, they released them, we get in the car, and the car drives us to the hotel. That's exactly what happened. And he knew that was going on. So I don't understand why he's trying to, that means he's lying to himself. You know, Bill, he's a grown man, he's not a kid. Why are you trying to lie to the fans, to the crowd? You know, instead of apologizing for the type of fight that your son did. Ran and ran and ran and ran. You know, I'm not saying, you know, it would have been a much better fight if he would have fought with my father, and maybe he would have beat my father, you know. But at least do something, you know. Don't try to lie to the crowd and say, oh, you still hurt him and you sent him to the hospital, because that's not true. That's not true. And when I see him I'm gonna tell him, I'm not gonna fight with him, but I'm gonna tell him, why you have to lie to the crowd when you know exactly what happened. You know exactly everybody had to be checked by the doctor in the ambulance.
Coach, how frustrating is it to go up against a fighter that moved around the way that Devin Haney did? What can you do to tell a guy, how can you box a guy that doesn't necessarily look like he wants to box?
Well, look, you know, he's coming off a beating. Let's be real. He's coming off a beating, so that was the best way to, they thought that was probably the best way to do it. I don't know, that was the game plan. They brought in Shane Mosley to help him. Shane Mosley's a warrior from Southern California. Man, Shane Mosley was never in those type of fights. Shane Mosley was a fighter, so I don't think Shane Mosley was probably disappointed. I don't think Shane Mosley told him to fight like that. They brought in Shane Mosley. Shane Mosley's a warrior from Southern California. Shane Mosley grew up in Southern California, where fucking fighters fight. And he used to fight. He fucking gave us beautiful fights. Shane Mosley, that was not Shane Mosley's style. So Shane Mosley didn't tell him you gotta box. He boxed because he was afraid to get hit. And his dad was afraid for his son to get hit. That's why they ran and ran and ran. Because that wasn't even boxing, that was running. Look, he's lucky because he broke record in less punches landing and less punches thrown. He's lucky Canelo's opponent did the same thing, and they beat that record, Canelo and Canelo's opponent. Because what's Canelo supposed to do when the opponent keeps running and keep running? There's nothing a fighter could do. You know, you could try to cut the range, you could try, but it's almost impossible.
Do you think that there should be, in wrestling, because I wrestled for years, there's a caution for stalling? When a guy's not engaging, the ref will stop the match and tell you, hey, I'm giving you an official warning. for a caution for stalling, encouraging the player or the wrestler in that matter to mix it up. Do you think that something like that should be installed in boxing?
There's no rules, but the ref could do it. We've seen it done before. Refs have done it. Where, hey, give me a fight. Guys got to fight. But everybody already knows Haney and Ryan. So they, it was gonna. We were not gonna be able to do that because it was pretty much already set up for Haney and Ryan to meet each other. Ryan ended up losing too. But, I think that was, pretty much.
What was your reaction to that? Romero.
Happy for Rollies,
beating Ryan by decision.
I don't know Rollies personally. I went against him with one of my fighters, Ramirez, a few years ago. The whole world.
Was a suspect decision.
The world thought Martinez beat him, but that's fine. Rollies is still a good dude. I see that he's a good character in boxing, and I was happy for him. I was happy that he became champion. He's now a 3-division champion, and he's got bigger things coming for him. So I'm happy for him. What I talked to Brad Guman, and Brad Guman tells me that he's a great kid. So I gotta respect that too. I never really talked to him or hang around with him, but I heard from Brad Guman that he's a great kid. So I'm happy for him.
What would you like to see him? Who would you like to see him in with next? He's making a splash at 147.
Well, look, he's a world champion, so man, there's so many fights out there for him, man. He doesn't have to look at unification fights or anything like that. There's so many big fights out there for him. He could fight Haney. He could fight, Teofimo. I don't know. There's so many fights out there. Plus, he's with PBC, so PBC has a lot of big fights out there for him too.
For that fight night, we were in the Top Rank headquarters with Bob Arum and the crew. They hosted us. We watched the fight with Fight Hub and Top Rank. One thing that stuck out with me, Bob Arum was particularly disgusted with the actions or with the way that the fight with Devin Haney went. Just basically saying that these guys don't want to fight. Tim Bradley said the same thing the other day when I interviewed him, saying basically they just want to take from the sport, that they're not really there to give anything back. What was your thoughts on that?
It's true, 100% true. Look, the commentators during the fight, obviously I was there live, but everybody on the phone tells me that the commentators were not saying nothing good about Haney either. So it's just one of those performances where the boxing fans are not happy with that performance, and then they come out trying to excuse themselves, we still send him to the hospital. That's bullshit. That is bullshit.
What about Teofimo Lopez? The only guy that everybody said that he looked better. He looked good. He kind of looked more like himself. What do you think about Teofimo?
Yeah, I think Teofimo had a good performance. Barbosa, I think should have tried a little bit more, a little bit harder, just to go out there and, man, so what if you get hurt or if you get knocked out? Just go out there and give it your best. That's the way sometimes we think as Mexicans. The heart and this and that. But I think Teofimo looked good. He looked, he was boxing good, landing good punches, counter punching good. I think Teofimo looked good. I think Teofimo has a bright future. He's a great fighter. So I think he's got big fights coming up for him.
And even with that, Bob Arum said afterward, he looked good tonight, whatever it was. He's still a huge underdog in my eyes versus Boots Ennis.
I believe so too. Boots Ennis is a solid guy at 147, and if they do that fight, it's a very dangerous fight for him. But I got to give him respect for actually going after that fight, man. Shit, he doesn't have to do that. There's so many fights out there, man. If he's going out there against the best welterweight out there, that's a lot part of him too. So I got to respect that.
Tonight, in a way, making his splash here in Las Vegas against Ramon Cardenas. Joel Diaz says that Inoue is in for a surprise tonight. Power in both hands. Cardenas.
I would love to see that. I would love to see that because I know Joel Diaz, Toño Diaz. We've known each other for fucking 40 years. Maybe more than that. Through the amateurs and everything, growing up in Southern California. So I would love to see that. I know that he's in great shape because I've had some of my guys sparring with him, and they say that he's in great shape. He's very strong. So I would love to see it. Obviously, the world doesn't expect that to happen. I would be very happy if that happened. But, the plan is for Inoue to go out there and make a good statement, go next in September, and then I think they got something lined up in December. So, they got his schedule going on already. But I would love to see Cardenas pull it off. He's from San Antonio. I know the kid, and he's a dedicated kid, so I would love to see it.
Coach, let me revisit Garcia one more time in our closing. a lot of guys are saying, a lot of folks out there, pundits saying, that's what it looks like when a guy was on pegs and off of pegs. What's your thoughts on now the accusations that have been bestowed upon Ryan, just coming back off suspension, and then that kind of fight he shows? Does that add to the suspicion?
I think a lot has to do with inactivity. It's a full year. Plus, he got dropped and hurt the second round, and it was a solid hook. I think after that, that's when everything changed. So I don't want to say, it was because of the positive test and all that, and now he's not on it. I want to think it was more inactivity, and that second round made the difference.
Crawford Canelo, they faced off. It's official, September 12th, Allegiant Stadium here in Las Vegas. Who do you give the early edge to?
My opinion changed now. I love Crawford. He knows that. I've seen him. I've talked to him many times, and I wish him the best. I'm actually very happy for him and Bomac for everything they've done and the big fight that they're getting. In this sport, making it to those fights and making it to those paydays, you got to be happy for anybody that makes it there. So Bomac knows, Crawford knows. Now I'm actually, after Canelo's performance, I'm actually leaning towards Crawford to win this fight.
Why is that? What changed?
Because I know he's got the heart, he's got the speed, the skills, and he's gonna go out there. I was thinking he put up a good first 6 rounds, but then Canelo will start picking it up. But now I think Crawford will go for I'm picking Crawford to win now.
Is this because you see a little slippage in Canelo?
I did.
What did you see with your keen eye that Canelo doesn't look? Where does he look different?
Well, look, he was looking for one punch at a time, and one punch at a time is not going to beat Crawford. That's not going to beat Crawford. Crawford's not going to run like Scott did, but he's still going to box very smart, and he's going to counter punch, and he's fast, and he's got great skills. So now I pick Crawford.
So it looks more even after last night.
Definitely, 100%.
100%. The face-off, you see the size of the guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Crawford looks like he's already grown into that size. A lot of people that don't know Crawford don't know he looks like he's a strong dude, walks around about 180
exactly.
anyway.
No, it's gonna be a pretty even fight. Canelo's also a smaller guy too. He's not. Canelo's not that big. I think Crawford's maybe an inch or half an inch, a little bit taller than Canelo.
Well, Coach, I know other people are waiting for you. As always, I'll see you in a couple days at the gym. Appreciate you, Marcus, for fighting.
Thank you, Marcus.